This is you life as a Tarsier. You are born in complete darkness, deep inside a hollow tree trunk. Your mother chose this spot carefully after weeks of searching for the perfect nursery. It's cramped, barely wider than her body, but it's safe from the dangers that lurk outside. Your eyes are massive, taking up almost half your tiny face, but they won't open for days. Your body is covered in soft gray fur, and your fingers already grip instinctively at anything they touch. You weigh less than a coin, but you're alive, and that's what matters most. Your mother doesn't leave you alone, not even for a second. She cradles you against her chest, her heartbeat the only sound you know besides your own breathing. She hasn't eaten in over a day, but feeding you comes first, always first. Milk flows warm and rich, giving you the strength to grow. Your tiny limbs twitch as you drink, and she adjusts her position to make sure you're comfortable. This is your world now: warmth, darkness, and the steady rhythm of survival. Your father is somewhere out there, defending the territory he claimed months ago before you were even conceived. He marks trees with his scent, leaving messages for any Tarsier foolish enough to wander too close. This land belongs to him, and by extension to you. He doesn't know you exist yet, but he's already fighting for your future. When he calls out into the night, his voice carries across the forest, a warning to rivals and a promise to your mother that he's still there, still protecting what's his. The sound is sharp and urgent, cutting through the humid air like a blade. Other Tarsiers hear it, and most of them turn away. They know better than to challenge a male who's already established his claim. But some don't listen, and those are the ones who end up learning the hard way. Inside your tree hollow, you start to change. Your eyes begin to crack open just slightly, letting in the first hints of light you've ever seen. It is overwhelming at first, too bright, too much, but your pupils adjust quickly, dilating to capture every photon available. Your mother notices immediately. She shifts her body to shield you from the harsh rays filtering through the entrance, her own eyes scanning constantly for threats that might exploit this vulnerable moment. Your vision is still blurry, but you can make out shapes now. The curved walls of your shelter, the texture of bark, the gentle sway of leaves beyond. Your world is expanding, whether you're ready or not. Your first attempts at movement are clumsy. Your arms and legs don't cooperate the way you want them to. You reach for your mother's fur and miss, grabbing at empty air instead. She doesn't laugh or get frustrated. She just moves closer, making it easier for you to find her. Your fingers finally make contact with her soft coat, and you grip tight like your life depends on it, which it does. Falling from this height would mean certain death, and your instincts already know this, even if your conscious mind doesn't understand the danger yet. Your mother's patience is infinite. She's been through this before with siblings you'll never meet, some who made it and others who didn't. Survival isn't guaranteed. It is earned one small victory at a time. Food becomes your obsession, not just your mother's milk, but the scents that drift in from outside the hollow. There's something else out there, something that makes your stomach growl with hunger. You don't know yet, but it's the smell of insects, the foundation of your future diet. Your mother can sense your growing appetite, and she knows that soon milk won't be enough. You'll need real food, the kind that fights back when you try to catch it. But that's still weeks away. For now, you're content to drink and sleep, and slowly build the strength you'll need for the challenges ahead. Your body is preparing itself, storing energy in muscles that will soon need to launch you through the canopy at impossible speeds. Your mother starts making short trips away from the hollow. At first, just a few minutes to grab a quick meal or check the immediate area for threats. You don't like being alone. The darkness feels different when she's gone, more oppressive, more dangerous. You call out with weak chirps that barely carry beyond the entrance, but she always comes back, sometimes with the taste of cricket still on her breath, sometimes with new scars from encounters you can't imagine. She never tells you about the close calls, about the snake that nearly found your hiding spot, or the owl that circled overhead for hours, waiting for a mistake that never came. These are her burdens to carry, not yours. Your hearing develops faster than everything else. The forest is full of sounds that tell stories if you know how to listen. The rustle of leaves means wind or movement. The crack of branches means something heavy is moving through the trees. The silence means predators are near and everything else is holding its breath. Your mother teaches you without words which sounds are safe and which ones mean danger. She tenses when certain calls echo through the night, and you learn to tense too, your body memorizing responses that might save your life later when you're out there alone, facing the same threats that have been hunting your kind for millions of years. Your first real meal comes sooner than expected. Your mother returns from a hunting trip with something wriggling in her mouth. It's a small grasshopper, still alive and kicking. She doesn't kill it. Instead, she holds it in front of you, watching as you try to figure out what to do with it. Your instincts kick in, and you grab it with both hands. The insect's legs scratch at your palms, but you don't let go. Your teeth are still small, but they're sharp enough to pierce the soft exoskeleton. The taste is unlike anything you've experienced before, rich and complex and satisfying in a way that milk never was. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, while your mother watches with something that might be pride in her enormous eyes. Your grip strength improves daily. What started as weak grasping becomes powerful enough to support your own weight. You test it constantly, hanging from your mother's arm or from small branches she brings into the hollow. Your fingers are designed for this, each one ending in a disc that can stick to almost any surface. The pads are sensitive enough to feel the texture of bark even in complete darkness, and strong enough to hold you suspended over a deadly drop. This is your superpower, the thing that will separate you from every other creature in the forest. When you're older, you'll be able to leap 20 feet and land perfectly on a branch no thicker than your thumb. But for now, you practice on twigs and your mother's patient limbs. Your first glimpse of the outside world comes when you're about 3 weeks old. Your mother carries you to the entrance of the hollow and lets you peek out at the vast green expanse beyond. It's overwhelming. The sheer scale of it makes you dizzy. There are trees everywhere, stretching up toward a canopy so thick you can barely see the sky between the leaves. Everything is moving constantly, leaves dancing in the breeze, branches swaying under the weight of unseen creatures. The air itself seems alive with possibility and danger in equal measure. You press closer to your mother, suddenly understanding how small you are in this enormous world. Your mother's hunting trips become longer and more frequent. She's preparing you for independence, whether you realize it or not. Each time, she leaves you alone for a few more minutes. Each time, she expects you to be a little braver, a little more self-sufficient. You start exploring the hollow on your own, mapping every inch of the curved walls with your sensitive fingertips. You discover cracks and crevices that could serve as escape routes if something dangerous ever finds your hiding spot. You're thinking like a Tarsier now, always planning, always preparing for the worst-case scenario. Because in the forest, the worst-case scenario happens more often than not. Your father makes his first appearance when you're nearly a month old. He arrives at the hollow entrance just after sunset, as his massive eyes scanning the interior until they find you. He doesn't enter, doesn't try to touch you, but he watches for several minutes as if memorizing your face. Your mother seems relaxed in his presence, which tells you he's safe, but you're still wary. He's so much larger than you had imagined. His hands could easily crush you if he chose to, but instead he just studies you, then disappears back into the night. You won't see him again for days, but knowing he's out there, patrolling the boundaries of your world, gives you a strange sense of security. Your first successful hunt happens almost by accident. A small spider drops from the ceiling of your hollow, landing right in front of you. Before you can think about it, your hand shoots out faster than your conscious mind can process, and suddenly you're holding a struggling arachnid. It's not much bigger than your thumb, but it's yours, caught through speed and instinct rather than luck. You look at your mother, expecting praise, but she's already turned away, focused on grooming her fur. This is normal for her, nothing worth celebrating. But for you, it's a revelation. You're not just a helpless infant anymore. You're a predator. Your mother starts bringing you different types of prey to practice on: beetles that are too slow to escape, crickets that jump but not fast enough, moths that flutter weakly against your palms. Each one teaches you something new about timing, about pressure, about the precise moment when struggling stops and feeding begins. You're developing the skills you'll need to survive on your own, and every successful catch makes you a little more confident, a little more ready for the world beyond your hollow tree. But confidence can be dangerous in the forest. It makes you careless, and careless tarsiers don't live long enough to reproduce. Your first real scare comes when you're 6 weeks old. Your mother is away hunting, and you're practicing your grip on a branch near the entrance when you hear something moving outside. It's not the familiar sound of your mother returning. It's heavier, more deliberate. Something large is climbing your tree. You freeze, every instinct screaming at you to hide, but you're already exposed, visible to anything that might look up from below. The sounds get closer and closer until you can hear breathing that doesn't belong to any tarsier you've ever heard. Then suddenly it stops. The silence is worse than the noise because you don't know if the threat is gone or if it's just waiting for you to make a mistake. Minutes pass like hours before you finally hear your mother's familiar call from somewhere in the distance. You respond immediately with a chirp that's probably too loud, too desperate, but you don't care. You need her to know where you are and that you're in danger. She arrives within seconds, launching herself through the entrance with a speed that takes your breath away. She scans the area quickly, then grabs you and moves deeper into the hollow. Her eyes are wide with adrenaline, and her grip is tighter than usual. You don't know what was out there, but you know it was something that even your mother feared. Your education accelerates after that close call. Your mother no longer treats you like a helpless infant. She expects you to be alert constantly, to recognize danger before it gets close enough to matter. She teaches you the different calls that other tarsiers use to communicate. Territory warnings, food discoveries, mating calls. Each one carries information that could save your life or help you find your next meal. You practice making the sounds yourself, your voice still high and weak, but getting stronger every day. You're building the vocabulary you'll need to survive in a world where communication can mean the difference between life and death. Your first night outside the hollow is both terrifying and exhilarating. Your mother leads you out just after darkness falls, when the forest comes alive with sounds and movement. You cling to her back as she navigates through the canopy with impossible grace, leaping from branch to branch with you as passenger. You feel the wind rushing past your face and see the ground far below, spinning in dizzying patterns. Your grip on her fur is so tight, Your knuckles ache, but you don't dare let go. This is what your life will be like. Constant movement through a three-dimensional maze where one mistake means death. Your mother shows you things that no amount of practice in the hollow could have prepared you for. She points out the trees that are safe to sleep in and the ones that harbor dangerous snakes. She demonstrates how to test a branch before trusting it with your full weight, how to spot the subtle signs that indicate whether bark is solid or rotten. She teaches you to read the forest like a book, where every leaf and shadow tells a story about what's safe and what's deadly. You absorb it all, your young brain cataloging information that will become second nature if you live long enough to use it. Your first solo glide happens when you're 8 weeks old. Your mother positions herself on a branch about 6 feet away and calls to you, encouraging you to make the leap. It looks impossible. The gap might as well be a canyon, but your instincts tell you it's within your range. You crouch on the branch, feeling the wood flex slightly under your weight. Then you jump. For a moment you're flying, weightless and free, with nothing but air beneath you. Then your hands make contact with the target branch, and you scramble to get a secure grip. Your mother chirps approval, and you feel a rush of pride that makes you want to attempt an even longer jump immediately. But she's already moving on to the next lesson. Your hunting skills develop rapidly now that you're mobile, but your first real kill doesn't go as planned. You spot a large beetle moving slowly across a branch and decide this is your moment. You approach carefully, keeping low and quiet, just like your mother taught you. But when you finally pounce, your aim is off by inches. The beetle drops to a lower branch, and you're left grasping at the empty air. Worse, the commotion attracts attention from something much larger than you. A monitor lizard that was hunting in the same area lifts its head and locks eyes with you. For a split second, neither of you moves. Then you scramble upward as fast as your limbs will carry you, while the lizard decides you're not worth the effort of a chase. Your mother finds you 20 minutes later, still shaking from the encounter. She doesn't scold you for the failed hunt. Instead, she demonstrates the proper technique on another beetle, showing you how to account for their tendency to drop when threatened, how to position yourself so you can follow their movement, how to strike with enough force to stun them immediately. Her movements are fluid and precise, honed by years of practice and countless meals that depended on getting it right the first time. You watch carefully, memorizing every detail, because you know your next solo hunt might be your last if you don't learn from this mistake. Your territory awareness expands as you grow stronger. Your mother takes you on longer journeys through the canopy, showing you the boundaries of your family's domain. She points out the scent marks your father has left on certain trees and teaches you to recognize the smell of foreign tarsiers who might pose a threat. You learn that the forest is divided into invisible territories, each one defended by individuals who will fight to the death rather than give up their hunting grounds. Your family's territory is roughly 2 acres of prime real estate, with enough insects to support 3 tarsiers, but barely enough to support 4, which means your time here is limited. Your first encounter with another young tarsier happens when you're 10 weeks old. You're practicing your jumping technique on a series of thin branches when you notice movement in your peripheral vision. Another tarsier about your size is doing the same thing on a parallel branch about 15 feet away. You freeze, uncertain whether this is a threat or an opportunity. The stranger notices you too, and for several minutes, you both remain motionless, sizing each other up. Then slowly, carefully, you begin to mirror each other's movements. When the stranger jumps left, you jump left. When they climb higher, you climb higher. It's like a dance performed by two creatures who speak the same language but have never met before. Your mother appears suddenly, breaking the spell between you and the stranger. She positions herself between you and the other Tarsier, her body language making it clear that this interaction is over. The stranger retreats immediately, disappearing into the canopy without a backward glance. Your mother doesn't explain why she intervened, but you understand the message. Some encounters are dangerous, even when they seem harmless. Trust is a luxury you can't afford in a world where every other Tarsier is potential competition for the same limited resources that keep you alive. Your independence training intensifies as you approach 3 months old. Your mother's hunting trips become overnight excursions, leaving you alone in the hollow for hours at a time. You're expected to feed yourself now, catching whatever insects wander within range of your hiding spot. It's not easy. The beetles are getting smarter about avoiding your usual ambush spots, and the crickets seem to have developed a sixth sense for detecting your presence before you can strike. You go hungry more often than you'd like, but each empty stomach teaches you something new about patience, about timing, about the delicate balance between aggression and stealth. Your first successful night hunt marks a turning point in your development. You catch a large moth that was attracted to the moonlight filtering through the canopy. The kill is clean and efficient, exactly the way your mother demonstrated dozens of times before, but this time you did it alone, without guidance or backup. The moth's wings flutter weakly in your grasp for a few seconds before going still, and you feel something change inside you. A confidence that wasn't there before. You're not just surviving anymore. You're becoming the predator you were born to be. Your mother's behavior toward you shifts subtly but unmistakably. She no longer automatically shares her kills with you. Instead, she eats first and only offers you the scraps if there are any left over. She stops grooming you as frequently, and when you try to sleep pressed against her side, she gently but firmly pushes you away to your own corner of the hollow. The message is clear. You're not a baby anymore, and she's not going to treat you like one. The transition is gradual but relentless, preparing you for the day when you'll have to leave this hollow forever and find your own territory to defend. Your first serious injury happens during a hunting expedition gone wrong. You're pursuing a grasshopper through a maze of thin branches when you misjudge the strength of a dead limb. It snaps under your weight, and you fall nearly 6 feet before catching yourself on a lower branch. But the impact drives a sharp piece of bark deep into your palm. The wound bleeds more than you expected, and the pain makes it difficult to grip properly. For several days, you're forced to hunt with one hand while the other heals slowly without medical attention. This is your introduction to the reality that in the forest, every injury is potentially fatal, and there's no safety net to catch you when you fall. Your mother's patience with your recovery is limited. She can't afford to hunt for 2 tarsiers indefinitely, so she brings you partially disabled prey to practice on. Insects with damaged wings or missing legs that can't escape as easily as healthy ones. It's humiliating but necessary, and you swallow your pride because pride doesn't fill an empty stomach. Your injured hand gradually regains its strength and flexibility, but you're left with a small scar that will remind you forever to test every branch before trusting it with your full weight. Some lessons can only be learned through pain, and this one cost you blood. Your social education expands beyond just avoiding other tarsiers. You learn to recognize the calls and behaviors of the creatures that share your forest home, the warning cries of birds that indicate aerial predators, the rustling patterns that means snakes are moving through the underbrush. The subtle changes in insect activity that signal larger disturbances in the ecosystem. You become a student of the forest's rhythm, learning to read the signs that tell you when to hunt, when to hide, and when to run. Your survival depends on understanding that you're part of a complex web of relationships where every creature is either predator or prey, and sometimes both. Your first territorial dispute occurs when you're nearly 4 months old. You're hunting in an area you've visited dozens of times before when you detect the scent of another Tarsier marking trees that should belong to your family. The smell is fresh, indicating the intruder passed through recently and might still be nearby. You follow the trail carefully, staying alert for any sign of movement. Then you see him, a large male Tarsier, methodically marking territory that isn't his. Your instincts scream at you to retreat, but something deeper keeps you frozen in place, watching as he claims what should be yours. Your father arrives before you can decide whether to fight or flee. He drops from the canopy like a stone, landing directly between you and the intruder. His posture is aggressive, every muscle tensed for combat. The intruder turns slowly, clearly aware that he's been caught trespassing. For a moment, the two males size each other up. Then your father attacks with a speed that takes your breath away. The fight is brief but vicious, a flurry of claws and teeth, and desperate grappling before the intruder breaks free and flees into the darkness. Your father doesn't pursue him, but his message is clear. This territory is defended, and the next trespasser might not be allowed to leave alive. Your mother's final lesson comes when you're 5 months old and nearly full grown. She leads you to the edge of your family's territory and stops at a tree you've never seen before. Its trunk is marked with dozens of scent trails from different Tarsiers, creating a complex map of who has passed through and when. Your mother adds her own scent to the collection, then looks at you expectantly. You understand what she wants you to do, but the significance of the moment makes you hesitate. Once you mark this tree, you're declaring yourself an adult Tarsier, ready to claim your own territory and defend it against all challengers, including members of your own family. Your scent mingles with the others on the bark, creating a new signature that announces your presence to every Tarsier in the area. Some will see it as a challenge, others as an opportunity, but all will know that there's a new player in the territorial game. Your mother watches you complete the marking, then turns and disappears into the canopy without a backward glance. You're on your own now for the first time in your life, with no safety net and no one to rely on but yourself. The forest stretches endlessly in all directions, full of opportunities and dangers in equal measure, and somewhere out there is the territory that will either make you or kill you. Your first night completely alone stretches endlessly ahead of you. Every sound in the forest seems amplified now that there's no one else to share the burden of staying alert. You've found a temporary hollow in a dead tree about half a mile from your family's territory, but it doesn't feel like home yet. The walls are rougher than what you're used to, and the entrance faces the wrong direction, leaving you exposed to predators that hunt from the east. You don't sleep much that first night. Instead, you listen to the symphony of creatures that own the darkness and try to figure out which ones might be hunting you. Your hunting success drops dramatically without your mother's guidance. The insects in this new area behave differently than the ones you grew up catching. They're warier, faster, and seem to know escape routes that you haven't discovered yet. You miss more strikes than you land, and the few catches you do make are smaller and less satisfying than what you need to maintain your energy levels. Hunger becomes a constant companion, gnawing at your stomach and making you take risks that a well-fed Tarsier would never consider. You start hunting during twilight hours, when visibility is poor, but competition is lighter. Your first real territorial challenge comes sooner than expected. You're marking a tree that seems perfect for your expanding territory when you catch the scent of another tarsier nearby. This one is different from the intruder your father chased away. This one smells female and young like you, but there's something else in her scent that makes your instincts fire in ways you don't fully understand yet. She appears on a branch about 20 feet away, and for several minutes, you both remain perfectly still, studying each other. She's slightly smaller than you, but her movements are confident and precise, suggesting she's been on her own longer than you have. Your interaction with the female Tarsier is unlike anything you've experienced before. She doesn't flee immediately, but she doesn't approach either. Instead, she begins a complex series of calls that you recognize as communication rather than threat. You respond with your own vocalizations, and slowly a conversation develops. She tells you through scent and sound that this area is already claimed by her, but she's not immediately hostile to your presence. Instead, she seems curious about your intentions and your ability to defend whatever territory you might establish. The exchange lasts nearly an hour before she disappears, leaving you with more questions than answers. Your territory selection becomes more strategic after that encounter. You realize that claiming land isn't just about finding a good hunting spot. It's about understanding the complex social dynamics of who already lives, where, and how your presence might upset the delicate balance of established relationships. You spend days mapping the scent trails and call patterns of your new neighborhood, identifying at least 6 different tarsiers who regularly pass through the area. Some are clearly territorial males who would fight you without hesitation. Others seem to be transients like yourself, still searching for their place in the forest's hierarchy. Your first successful defense of claimed territory happens when you're 6 months old. You've been working on establishing a small hunting ground around 3 productive trees when another male tarsier decides to test your resolve. He's older than you and more experienced, but he's also operating outside his established territory, which gives you the advantage of fighting on familiar ground. The confrontation starts with aggressive calling and scent marking, but escalates quickly when he refuses to back down. You launch yourself at him with everything you've learned about combat from watching your father. Your fighting technique is crude but effective. You use your superior knowledge of the local branches to force him into disadvantageous positions where his size and strength can't be fully utilized. The battle lasts only minutes, but feels like hours. Every muscle in your body screams with exhaustion by the time he finally retreats, leaving you bloodied but victorious. You've proven to yourself and every other tarsier in the area that you're capable of defending what you claim. But the victory comes at a cost. Several of your wounds will take weeks to heal properly. Your hunting efficiency improves dramatically once you establish a secure territory. The insects in your area begin to follow predictable patterns that you can exploit. You learn which trees produce the most beetles at what times of night, where the moths gather when the moon is brightest, how to position yourself to intercept crickets as they move between feeding areas. Your success rate climbs from less than 50% to over 80%, and for the first time since leaving your family's territory, you're consistently well-fed. Your first winter as an independent tarsier tests everything you've learned about survival. The insect population drops significantly as temperatures cool, and many of your usual prey species become dormant or migrate to warmer areas. You're forced to expand your hunting techniques, targeting smaller prey that you previously ignored and learning to extract maximum nutrition from every catch. You also discover that some insects change their behavior in cold weather, making them easier to catch but less nutritious than their warm weather counterparts. Your social interactions become more complex as you mature. You encounter the female Tarsier from your earlier meeting several more times, and each interaction is different. Sometimes she's receptive to your presence, allowing you to hunt in adjacent areas without conflict. Other times, she's aggressively territorial, chasing you away from resources you thought were neutral ground. You begin to understand that Tarsier society operates on subtle cues and unspoken agreements that take time to master. Your first serious predator encounter happens during a particularly successful hunting session. You're focused on stalking a large beetle when you notice that all the other sounds in your immediate area have stopped. The silence is so complete, it makes your ears ring, and every instinct you have screams danger. You freeze in place, scanning the darkness for movement. Then you see it, a large snake coiled on a branch directly above your position. Its head is pointed toward you, and you realize it's been watching you for several minutes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Your escape from the snake requires every skill you've developed since leaving your family's territory. You can't outrun it, and you can't outfight it, but you can outmaneuver it. Using your superior agility and knowledge of the local canopy, you launch yourself sideways off your current branch, just as the snake strikes, missing its target by inches. You bound through the trees in a zigzag pattern that makes it impossible for the snake to predict your next move. After several minutes of desperate flight, you finally lose it in a tangle of vines where its larger body can't follow. Your recovery from the snake encounter takes longer than you expected, not because of physical injuries, but because of the psychological impact of nearly becoming prey. You find yourself hunting more cautiously, jumping at shadows, and abandoning promising hunting spots at the first sign of anything unusual. Your catch rate drops, and you start losing weight again, but gradually your confidence returns as you realize that surviving that encounter has made you a better, more aware hunter than you were before. Your territorial boundaries expand slowly but steadily. As you mature and gain experience, you're able to claim and defend larger areas with more diverse hunting opportunities. But expansion brings new challenges, including contact with Tarsiers you've never encountered before. Some are friendly or at least neutral, others are aggressively territorial and seem to view any expansion of your territory as a personal threat to their own survival. You learn to read the subtle signs that indicate whether a new neighbor is likely to be friend or foe. Your first major territorial loss occurs when an older, more experienced male decides he wants part of your hunting ground. He doesn't challenge you directly. Instead, he begins a campaign of systematic harassment, marking trees just inside your boundaries, calling aggressively during your hunting hours, and generally making it clear that he intends to make your life difficult until you abandon the disputed area. You try to fight back, but he's too smart and too experienced to be drawn into a direct confrontation that might favor your younger reflexes. Your decision to abandon the disputed territory is strategic rather than cowardly. You recognize that defending it would cost more energy than the hunting ground is worth, and that continuing the conflict might attract the attention of other Tarsiers who could exploit your distraction to claim even more of your territory. You retreat to your core hunting areas and focus on maximizing their productivity while looking for opportunities to expand in other directions where the competition might be less intense. Your hunting skills reach a new level of sophistication as you approach your first birthday. You can now catch insects that would have been impossible targets when you first left your family's territory. Your timing is perfect, your aim is precise, and your knowledge of prey behavior allows you to predict their movements with uncanny accuracy. You're no longer just surviving, you're thriving in a way that would have seemed impossible during those first desperate weeks on your own. Your social status in the local Tarsier community stabilizes as other individuals recognize your competence and territorial integrity. You're no longer viewed as a vulnerable youngster who can be easily displaced. Instead, you're seen as an established member of the community with legitimate claims to your territory and hunting rights. This recognition doesn't come with friendship. Tarsiers are fundamentally solitary creatures, but it does come with a certain level of respect that makes your daily survival significantly easier. Your first full year of independence ends with you controlling a territory nearly as large as your family's original holdings. You've survived predators, territorial disputes, food shortages, and the countless small disasters that kill most young Tarsiers before they reach maturity. You've learned to read the forest like a book, to hunt with deadly efficiency, and to defend what's yours against all challengers. But most importantly, you've learned that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about adapting to whatever the forest throws at you and finding ways to turn challenges into opportunities. Your second year begins with new challenges. As your body reaches full maturity and your instincts start focusing on reproduction rather than just survival, you notice changes in how you respond to the scents and calls of other Tarsiers, particularly females. And you begin to understand that your territorial behavior is about more than just securing hunting grounds. It's about establishing the resources necessary to attract a mate and potentially raise offspring of your own. Your first serious courtship attempt happens when you encounter a female Tarsius who seems receptive to your advances. She's established her own territory adjacent to yours, and over several weeks, you engage in increasingly complex interactions that involve mutual grooming, shared hunting expeditions, and elaborate vocal displays that can be heard throughout your section of the forest. But courtship among Tarsiers is a delicate process that can turn dangerous if mishandled, and you're still learning the subtle cues that indicate interest versus tolerance. Your relationship with the female develops slowly over months of careful interaction. She allows you to hunt in her territory occasionally, and sometimes joins you in yours, but she maintains her independence and makes it clear that any permanent arrangement will be on her terms, not yours. You learn that female Tarsiers are extremely selective about their mates, and that your territorial success, while impressive, is only one factor in her decision-making process. Your hunting skills, your ability to avoid predators, and your overall health are all being constantly evaluated. Your first mating season arrives with a complexity you weren't prepared for. The female you've been courting is suddenly being visited by other males, some of whom are older and more experienced than you. The competition is fierce and sometimes violent, as multiple males compete for her attention. You're forced to defend not just your own territory, but your courtship investment against rivals who have nothing to lose and everything to gain from displacing you. Your courtship success comes after weeks of intense competition and several violent encounters with rival males. The female finally accepts your advances and you mate successfully, but the relationship remains complicated. Even after mating, she doesn't move into your territory or abandon her own. Instead, you maintain separate territories with overlapping boundaries that allow for regular contact while preserving both of your independence. This arrangement works well for both of you, but requires constant negotiation and compromise. Your first offspring arrives nearly 6 months after mating, and suddenly everything about your life changes. Your focus shifts from personal survival to family protection as you realize that your territory now needs to support not just you, but a mate and baby. You increase your hunting efforts and become more aggressive in defending your boundaries, because any weakness could result in the loss of resources that your family depends on for survival. The responsibility is overwhelming, but also strangely satisfying, as you discover instincts you didn't know you possessed. Your parenting responsibilities are unlike anything you've experienced before. Your mate handles most of the direct care, while you focus on territory defense and resource gathering. But even this division of labor is exhausting. You patrol your boundaries more frequently than ever before because other Tarsiers can sense when territories are weakened by the demands of raising young. Some will test your resolve with aggressive displays, while others simply wait for you to make a mistake that leaves an opening they can exploit. You sleep less, hunt more, and find yourself constantly on edge as every sound in the forest becomes a potential threat to your family. Your hunting strategy evolves to accommodate your new responsibilities. You can't afford to spend hours stalking a single large prey item anymore. Instead, you focus on quick, efficient kills that allow you to return to your territory rapidly. You develop techniques for catching multiple smaller insects in rapid succession, maximizing your caloric intake while minimizing your time away from home patrol duties. Your success rate actually improves because desperation sharpens your focus and eliminates the luxury of being selective about targets. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes more complex now that you're a parent. Some who previously viewed you as competition now see you as a potential ally against more serious threats to the local ecosystem. Others, however, view your family unit as a sign of weakness and increase their territorial pressure, hoping to force you out of prime hunting areas entirely. You learn to distinguish between genuine threats and opportunistic testing, adjusting your response accordingly to avoid unnecessary conflicts while maintaining your essential boundaries. Your first real test as a protector comes when a large monitor lizard establishes itself in a tree near your family's primary shelter. The lizard isn't actively hunting Tarsiers, but its presence changes the entire dynamic of your territory, making it dangerous for your mate to move freely with your infant. You can't simply relocate because your territory represents months of careful establishment, and your mate's condition makes long-distance travel risky. Instead, you must find a way to remove the threat without putting your family at greater risk. Your confrontation with the monitor lizard requires every bit of cunning and agility you've developed over 2 years of independent living. You can't attack it directly because it's too large and well armored, but you can make its life miserable through constant harassment. You begin a campaign of systematic annoyance, calling loudly whenever it tries to rest, dropping small objects on it from above, and generally making it clear that staying in your territory will be more trouble than it's worth. The strategy works, but takes weeks to achieve results, during which your stress levels remain dangerously high. Your mate's hunting abilities are severely limited while caring for your infant, which means you're essentially supporting 3 Tarsiers on your own hunting efforts. The caloric demands are staggering, and you find yourself taking risks you would never have considered before, venturing into disputed territories, hunting during daylight hours when visibility is better, but predator activity is higher, and even attempting to catch prey species that are normally too dangerous to pursue. Your success rate drops, but your total catch volume increases through sheer determination and longer hunting sessions. Your infant's development brings new challenges as it grows large enough to move around, but not yet coordinated enough to avoid danger. You watch in terror as it makes its first clumsy attempts at climbing, sometimes slipping and nearly falling before your mate can intervene. Every day brings new hazards that you never had to consider before. Branches that seemed perfectly safe for adult tarsiers become death traps for small, clumsy hands, and the list of potential accidents grows longer as your offspring becomes more mobile and curious about its environment. Your territory management becomes more sophisticated as you adapt to family life. You identify the safest routes between important resources and mark them clearly with scent trails that help your mate navigate efficiently, even in poor visibility. You establish multiple backup shelters in case your primary hollow becomes compromised, and you create food caches in strategic locations that can sustain your family during emergencies or when hunting conditions are poor. These preparations require significant time investment, but prove invaluable when tested by real crises. Your first major family emergency occurs when your mate becomes ill from eating contaminated prey. Her condition deteriorates rapidly, and for several days, she's unable to hunt or even move far from your primary shelter. You're forced to take over all hunting duties while also providing protection for both her and your infant. The workload is impossible to sustain long term, but somehow you manage to keep everyone fed and safe until her natural healing abilities overcome the poisoning. The experience teaches you that survival margins are even thinner than you realized. Your offspring's first successful hunt marks a turning point in your family dynamics. Suddenly, you're not just supporting dead weight, but beginning to train the next generation of hunters. Your young Tarsier's technique is crude, and its success rate is abysmal, but every catch represents progress toward eventual independence. You find yourself reliving your own early hunting experiences as you watch your offspring make the same mistakes you once did. The cycle of learning and adaptation continues, with you now in the role of teacher rather than student. Your territorial expansion becomes necessary as your family's resource needs grow beyond what your original boundaries can sustain. You begin claiming additional hunting areas, but the process is more complex now because you can't afford to engage in prolonged conflicts that might leave your family vulnerable. Other Tarsiers seem to sense this limitation, and some become more aggressive in testing your resolve. You're forced to choose your battles carefully, picking fights you can win quickly while avoiding confrontations that might escalate beyond your ability to control. Your mate's recovery from illness is slow but steady, and gradually she begins contributing to family hunting efforts again. But the experience has changed both of you, making you more cautious about food sources and more aware of how quickly circumstances can shift from stable to desperate. You establish new protocols for testing prey before consumption and develop backup plans for various emergency scenarios that previously seemed too unlikely to worry about. Paranoia becomes a survival tool rather than a weakness. Your offspring's growth rate accelerates as it masters basic climbing and jumping skills. Soon, it's following you and your mate on short hunting expeditions, learning through observation and mimicry how to identify prey, track movement patterns, and execute successful strikes. Its presence makes your hunting less efficient because you have to move more slowly and carefully, but the educational value is immense as you watch your offspring develop the skills that will eventually allow it to survive independently. Your second year as a parent brings new challenges as your offspring becomes more independent and begins testing boundaries, both physical and social. It starts wandering farther from designated safe areas and shows increasing interest in territories beyond your family's established boundaries. You recognize this behavior as natural preparation for eventual independence, but it also creates security risks that require constant vigilance and frequent intervention to prevent dangerous situations. Your relationship with your mate evolves as parenting responsibilities shift and change. You work together more closely than ever before, but the stress of constant vigilance and resource pressure also creates tensions that didn't exist during your earlier courtship period. You learn to communicate more effectively about territory management, hunting schedules, and threat assessment, but you also discover that even strong partnerships can be strained by the relentless demands of raising young in a hostile environment. Your hunting efficiency reaches its peak during this period as desperation and experience combine to create nearly perfect technique. You can now catch insects that would have been impossible targets just a year ago, and your knowledge of prey behavior allows you to predict their movements with uncanny accuracy. You're operating at the limits of what's physically possible for a Tarsier, but the energy costs are enormous, and you know this level of performance isn't sustainable indefinitely. Your territory has expanded to nearly twice its original size through careful strategic claiming and successful defense against multiple challenges. You control some of the best hunting grounds in your section of forest, and your scent markers are respected by most neighboring Tarsiers as legitimate boundary claims. But maintaining this territory requires constant effort, and the larger your holdings become, the more attractive they are to potential challengers who might try to claim portions for themselves. Your offspring's first territorial marking ceremony occurs when it reaches 8 months old, and you realize that your time as a family unit is beginning to wind down. Soon, your young Tarsier will need to establish its own territory, and you'll need to shift from protector to potential competitor. The transition is gradual but inevitable, and you begin preparing both yourself and your offspring for the eventual separation that will mark its entry into full adulthood. Your mate shows signs of preparing for another reproductive cycle, which would mean starting the entire parenting process over again with all its associated costs and risks. You're not sure you have the energy reserves to support another family while still helping your current offspring establish independence. But the biological drive to reproduce is stronger than rational calculation, and you find yourself responding to her changing scent patterns despite your exhaustion. Your territory defense becomes more critical as word spreads through the local Tarsier community that you're preparing to support another family. Other males begin testing your boundaries more aggressively, hoping to claim portions of your territory while you're distracted by family duties. You're forced to engage in several serious confrontations that leave you injured and exhausted, but also establish your continued dominance over your established holdings. Your hunting grounds face new pressure as environmental changes affect insect populations in your area. A particularly dry season reduces the availability of your usual prey species, forcing you to adapt your techniques and expand your dietary range. You discover that some insects you previously ignored are actually quite nutritious and begin incorporating them into your regular hunting routine. But the learning curve is steep, and your catch rate drops significantly while you master new techniques. Your first offspring begins showing signs of sexual maturity and territorial ambition, which creates complex family dynamics as it starts challenging your authority in subtle ways. The young Tarsier tests boundaries, both physical and social, pushing against restrictions that were previously accepted without question. You recognize this behavior as normal development, but it also signals that your family structure is beginning to break down as individual interests diverge from collective survival needs. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes more complicated as your offspring starts interacting with other young Tarsiers in the area. Some of these interactions are friendly and educational, while others are competitive and potentially dangerous. You find yourself monitoring these social connections carefully because they could lead to either beneficial alliances or serious conflicts that might threaten your family's security. Your mate's second pregnancy brings both joy and anxiety as you realize you'll soon be supporting an even larger family on the same territorial resources that are already stretched thin. You begin expanding your hunting range again, but encounter resistance from established neighbors who view your territorial growth as a direct threat to their own survival. The conflicts are more intense than before because both sides are fighting for resources that their families depend on. Your energy reserves are constantly depleted by the demands of territory defense, family protection, and resource gathering. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably sustain through normal foraging. You're forced to take increasingly desperate risks to maintain your family's nutrition levels, including hunting in areas where predator activity is higher than you'd normally accept. Your first offspring's departure from family territory happens gradually over several weeks as it establishes its own hunting grounds and sleeping sites nearby. The separation is emotionally difficult but practically necessary because your territory can't support another adult Tarsier indefinitely. You maintain occasional contact with your offspring, but the relationship shifts from parent-child to neutral neighbors as it establishes its own place in the local social hierarchy. Your second offspring arrives just as territorial pressure reaches its peak, and you're forced to defend your boundaries against multiple challengers simultaneously while also protecting a newborn and supporting your mate through her recovery period. The stress is overwhelming, and you begin making mistakes that would have been unthinkable during your earlier years as a territory holder. Your reflexes are slower, your judgment is impaired by exhaustion, and your margin for error has virtually disappeared. Your hunting technique begins to deteriorate as age and stress take their toll on your physical capabilities. You miss strikes that would have been automatic just a few months ago, and find yourself unable to pursue prey through the complex aerial maneuvers that once came naturally. Your success rate drops significantly, and you're forced to spend more time hunting to achieve the same caloric intake that previously required much less effort. Your territory begins shrinking as more aggressive neighbors sense your weakness and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds. You lack the energy to defend every boundary simultaneously and are forced to prioritize the most critical areas while abandoning marginal territories that are too expensive to maintain. This strategic retreat is necessary for survival, but it also reduces your family's resource base at a time when their needs are greatest. Your mate's health begins showing signs of strain from repeated pregnancies and the constant stress of life in a contested territory. She's slower to recover from illness and injury, and her hunting efficiency has declined significantly from its peak levels. You realize that your family unit is operating beyond its sustainable capacity, and that major changes will be necessary to ensure long-term survival. Your second offspring's development is complicated by the reduced resources and increased territorial pressure that characterize your family's current situation. The young Tarsier grows more slowly than its older sibling and seems less confident in its physical abilities, possibly due to the constant stress and limited nutrition that have marked its early development. You worry that these early disadvantages might affect its long-term survival prospects. Your relationship with your mate becomes strained as the pressures of territory defense and family survival create constant tension between short-term needs and long-term planning. You find yourselves disagreeing about resource allocation, territorial strategy, and offspring management in ways that would have been unimaginable during your earlier partnership. The stress is taking a toll on both of you, and you begin to wonder whether your family structure is sustainable. Your territorial holdings continue to erode as younger, more aggressive Tarsiers move into your area and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds. You're forced to retreat further into your core territory and focus your defensive efforts on protecting only the most essential resources. The process is humiliating, but necessary, as you lack the physical capability to defend your earlier territorial extent. Your hunting grounds become increasingly marginal as you're pushed into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. You're forced to work harder for smaller rewards, and the energy cost of hunting begins to exceed the caloric value of your catches. On some days, you find yourself questioning whether the effort is worth the results and whether your family would be better served by a different survival strategy. Your age becomes a factor in territorial disputes as younger challengers begin testing your resolve with increasing frequency. They can sense that your reflexes are slower and your energy reserves are lower than in previous years, and some become bold enough to challenge you directly rather than simply testing your boundaries through subtle encroachment. You win some of these confrontations, but lose others, and the pattern of losses is becoming more frequent. Your family's resource situation reaches a crisis point when your mate becomes pregnant for the third time, while your territory is already too small to support your current family size. You're forced to make difficult decisions about expansion versus retreat, and the choices you make will determine whether your family survives or becomes another casualty of the forest's relentless competition for limited resources. Your third pregnancy announcement forces you to confront the mathematical reality of your situation. 3 adults and potentially 3 offspring cannot survive on a territory that barely supports your current family size. You begin scouting for expansion opportunities, but every direction leads to established territories defended by Tarsiers who are younger, stronger, and more desperate than you. The forest that once seemed infinite now feels like a cage, with walls closing in from all sides. Your scouting expeditions reveal that territorial opportunities exist, but only in marginal areas where insect density is low and predator activity is high. These borderlands between established territories offer space but little else, and you calculate that moving your family there would simply trade immediate territorial pressure for slow starvation. Your options are narrowing to choices between different types of failure. Your mate's condition during her third pregnancy is noticeably worse than her previous 2. She's slower to recover from hunting expeditions and requires more rest between activities. Her appetite has increased, but her hunting efficiency has declined, creating a resource deficit that you're struggling to compensate for through your own efforts. You realize that this pregnancy might be her last, regardless of its outcome. Your second offspring begins showing signs of territorial ambition. Just as your resource crisis reaches its peak, the young Tarsier starts making exploratory trips beyond your boundaries and marking trees with its own scent, creating potential conflicts with neighbors who might interpret these actions as aggressive expansion rather than normal juvenile development. You're caught between encouraging natural development and preventing diplomatic disasters. Your hunting schedule becomes increasingly desperate as you attempt to support a growing family on a shrinking territory. You're now hunting during daylight hours when visibility is better, but predator risk is higher, and you're pursuing insects that you previously considered too dangerous or too energy expensive to catch. Your success rate drops, but your total hunting time increases to compensate. Your first offspring returns unexpectedly to your territory after failing to establish its own hunting grounds elsewhere. The young adult is thin and obviously struggling, but its presence immediately creates resource conflicts that your family cannot afford. You're forced to choose between supporting your struggling offspring and maintaining adequate nutrition for your pregnant mate and second offspring. The decision tears at instincts that demand you protect all your genetic legacy. Your territorial boundaries continue shrinking as neighbors sense your weakness and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds through aggressive scent marking and direct confrontation. You lack the energy to defend every incursion and are forced to prioritize the most critical areas while abandoning marginal territories that once provided important supplemental resources. Your core territory is now less than half its original size. Your mate's hunting becomes increasingly inefficient as her pregnancy progresses, and you're forced to take over most of the resource gathering while also maintaining territorial defense and offspring supervision. The workload is impossible to sustain at your current energy levels, and you begin losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric demands exceed your physical capacity to gather resources. Your second offspring's development suffers as family resources are stretched beyond their limits. The young Tarsier grows more slowly than normal and shows signs of malnutrition that could affect its long-term survival prospects. You realize that your family's size has exceeded your territorial capacity and that some form of crisis is inevitable unless circumstances change dramatically. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes increasingly hostile as competition for limited resources intensifies. Territories that once had clear boundaries become contested zones where conflicts occur regularly. You find yourself engaged in more aggressive encounters than ever before, but your success rate in these confrontations is declining as your physical condition deteriorates. Your third offspring arrives during the worst resource crisis your family has ever faced. Your mate's recovery is slow and complicated by malnutrition, and you're forced to support 4 dependents on hunting grounds that can barely sustain 2 adults. The mathematical impossibility of the situation becomes clear as you watch your family's condition deteriorate despite your best efforts. Your hunting technique continues to decline as age and exhaustion take their toll on your physical capabilities. You miss strikes that would have been automatic just months ago and find yourself unable to pursue prey through the complex aerial maneuvers that once came naturally. Your energy expenditure for each successful catch increases while your success rate drops, creating an unsustainable resource equation. Your territorial defense becomes increasingly desperate as you're forced to choose between protecting your boundaries and hunting for your family. Each decision carries enormous costs, and the wrong choice could result in either territorial loss or family starvation. You begin making strategic retreats that preserve your energy for the most critical confrontations while abandoning less essential areas. Your mate's condition after her third pregnancy shows signs of permanent decline. She's slower to recover from illness and injury, and her hunting efficiency has dropped to levels that make her more of a resource drain than a contributor to family survival. You realize that her reproductive career is effectively over and that your family structure must adapt to this new reality. Your first offspring's continued presence in your territory creates ongoing resource conflicts that weaken your family's overall survival prospects. The young adult competes directly with your mate and other offspring for the limited insects available in your hunting grounds, but its hunting skills are still developing, and its success rate is too low to justify the resources it consumes. Your second offspring begins showing signs of territorial ambition, just as your family's resource crisis reaches its peak. The young Tarsier starts making exploratory trips beyond your boundaries and shows increasing reluctance to share its catches with younger siblings. You recognize this behavior as normal development, but it also signals that your family unit is beginning to fragment under resource pressure. Your third offspring's growth is severely impacted by the limited nutrition available during its early development. The young Tarsier is smaller and weaker than its siblings were at the same age and shows signs of developmental delays that could affect its long-term survival prospects. You realize that your family's reproductive success is declining with each generation. Your energy reserves reach critically low levels as you attempt to maintain territorial defense while supporting an unsustainable family size. You find yourself taking increasingly desperate risks to gather enough resources to keep everyone alive, including hunting in areas where predator activity is dangerously high and pursuing insects that are barely worth the energy cost of catching them. Your territorial holdings shrink to a core area that contains only the most essential resources. Your scent markers are increasingly ignored by neighbors who sense your weakness, and your ability to defend even these reduced boundaries is questionable. You're forced to choose between protecting your family's immediate survival and maintaining the territorial integrity that ensures their long-term prospects. Your mate's hunting becomes so inefficient that her efforts barely cover her own nutritional needs, let alone contribute to family resources. You're essentially supporting 4 Tarsiers on your own hunting efforts while also maintaining whatever territorial defense you can manage. The situation is clearly unsustainable, but you lack viable alternatives. Your family's social structure begins breaking down as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Your offspring begin hoarding catches rather than sharing them, and conflicts over food become frequent and increasingly violent. You realize that your family unit is dissolving under the pressure of circumstances beyond your control. Your hunting grounds become increasingly marginal as you're pushed into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. You're forced to work harder for smaller rewards, and the energy cost of hunting begins to exceed the caloric value of your catches. On many days, you find yourself questioning whether the effort is worthwhile. Your age becomes a significant factor in your declining ability to compete for resources. Your reflexes are slower, your strength is reduced, and your recovery time from injuries is longer than it once was. Younger Tarsiers sense these weaknesses and become increasingly bold in their challenges to your territorial claims. Your third offspring's development is severely compromised by the limited resources available during its critical growth period. The young Tarsier is smaller, weaker, and less coordinated than its siblings were at the same age, and shows signs of developmental delays that could affect its entire life trajectory. You realize that your reproductive success is declining with each generation. Your relationship with your mate becomes strained as the pressures of family survival create constant tension between competing needs and limited resources. You find yourselves disagreeing about resource allocation, territorial strategy, and offspring management in ways that would have been unimaginable during your earlier partnership. Your territorial boundaries continue eroding as younger, more aggressive Tarsiers move into your area and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds through direct confrontation and aggressive scent marking. You lack the physical capability to defend your earlier territorial extent and are forced to retreat into an increasingly small core area. Your hunting efficiency drops to levels that barely sustain your own survival, let alone support your family's needs. You're forced to spend more time hunting to achieve the same caloric intake that previously required much less effort, and the energy cost of these extended hunting sessions begins exceeding the nutritional value of your catches. Your family's resource situation reaches a crisis point where difficult decisions about survival priorities become unavoidable. You're forced to choose between supporting your struggling offspring and maintaining adequate nutrition for family members who have better long-term survival prospects. The mathematics of survival leave no room for sentiment or wishful thinking. Your mate's condition continues deteriorating as the stress of repeated pregnancies and constant resource scarcity takes its toll on her physical capabilities. She's slower to recover from illness and injury, and her hunting efficiency has dropped to levels that make her more of a liability than an asset to family survival. Your second offspring's territorial ambitions create additional conflicts as the young Tarsier begins challenging your authority and competing directly with its siblings for limited resources. You recognize this behavior as natural development, but it also signals that your family structure is fragmenting under pressure. Your third offspring's survival prospects appear increasingly doubtful as malnutrition and developmental delays compound the challenges of life in a contested territory. You realize that your reproductive success is declining with each generation, and that your genetic legacy may not extend beyond your current offspring. Your energy reserves are constantly depleted by the impossible demands of supporting an oversized family on inadequate territorial resources. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably sustain through normal foraging. Your territorial defense becomes increasingly selective as you're forced to prioritize the most critical areas while abandoning marginal territories that are too expensive to maintain. This strategic retreat is necessary for survival, but it also reduces your family's resource base at a time when their needs are greatest. Your hunting grounds face additional pressure as environmental changes affect insect populations in your area. Seasonal variations that once provided predictable resource cycles now create unpredictable scarcity that makes long-term planning impossible. You're forced to adapt your techniques constantly, but the learning curve is steep and your catch rate suffers. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes increasingly hostile as competition for limited resources intensifies. Territories that once had clear boundaries become contested zones where conflicts occur regularly, and your success rate in these confrontations continues declining as your physical condition deteriorates. Your family's social dynamics become increasingly dysfunctional as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Conflicts over food become frequent and violent, and the cooperative behaviors that once characterized your family unit are replaced by desperate individual survival strategies. Your mate's reproductive career appears to be ending as her physical condition deteriorates beyond the point where another pregnancy would be viable. This realization forces you to confront the fact that your family's growth phase is over and that survival now depends on successfully raising your existing offspring to independence. Your first offspring's continued dependence on family resources creates ongoing conflicts that weaken your family's overall survival prospects. The young adult's hunting skills remain inadequate, and its presence in your territory creates competition that your resource base cannot support indefinitely. Your second offspring begins showing signs of preparation for independence, including exploratory trips beyond your territorial boundaries and increasingly selective sharing of hunting catches. You recognize this behavior as normal development, but it also signals that your family unit is beginning to fragment. Your third offspring's development continues to be compromised by inadequate nutrition and the stress of life in a contested territory. The young Tarsier's growth is slower than normal, and its physical capabilities lag behind what would be expected for its age group. Your hunting technique shows clear signs of age-related decline as your reflexes slow and your physical coordination deteriorates. You miss strikes that would have been automatic just months ago and find yourself unable to pursue prey through the complex movements that once came naturally. Your territorial holdings shrink to a core area that barely provides adequate resources for your family's survival. Your scent markers are increasingly ignored by neighbors who sense your weakness, and your ability to defend even these reduced boundaries becomes questionable. Your energy expenditure for territorial defense and family support exceeds your ability to gather resources through hunting, creating an unsustainable situation where your physical condition deteriorates despite successful foraging efforts. You're caught in a downward spiral that threatens your family's survival. Listen, wait. Your mate's hunting efficiency drops to levels where her efforts barely cover her own nutritional needs and contribute virtually nothing to family resources. You're essentially supporting your entire family on your own hunting efforts while also maintaining whatever territorial defense you can manage. Your family's resource crisis forces you to make increasingly desperate decisions about survival priorities, including choices between supporting struggling offspring and maintaining adequate nutrition for family members with better long-term survival prospects. Your relationship with your mate becomes strained by the constant pressure of resource scarcity and family survival needs. You find yourselves in conflict over decisions that would have been cooperative during your earlier partnership, as individual survival instincts begin overriding family loyalty. Your territorial boundaries continue eroding as you lack the energy to defend against aggressive expansion by neighboring Tarsiers who sense your weakness and view your hunting grounds as opportunities for their own territorial growth. Your core territory shrinks to areas that provide only marginal resources. Your hunting grounds become increasingly inadequate as you're forced into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. The energy cost of hunting in these marginal areas often exceeds the caloric value of your catches, creating a resource deficit that compounds your family's survival crisis. Your age becomes a critical factor in your declining ability to compete for resources. As your physical capabilities deteriorate and your recovery time from injuries increases, younger Tarsiers become increasingly bold in their challenges to your territorial claims, sensing that your ability to defend your holdings is compromised. Your third offspring's survival prospects appear increasingly doubtful as the combination of malnutrition, developmental delays, and territorial instability creates challenges that may be impossible to overcome. You realize that your reproductive success is declining with each generation and that your genetic legacy faces an uncertain future. Your family's survival becomes a daily calculation of impossible mathematics as you attempt to support 4 Tarsiers on territory that barely sustains 2. The numbers don't add up, no matter how you arrange them, and each day brings new evidence that your situation is deteriorating beyond recovery. Your hunting efforts yield diminishing returns as age and exhaustion compound the effects of territorial pressure, creating a spiral that threatens to consume everything you've built. Your mate's condition stabilizes at a level that's concerning, but not immediately life-threatening. She can still hunt, but her efficiency is so low that her efforts barely justify the energy she expends. You find yourself covering her shortfalls while managing your own declining capabilities, and the mathematics of survival become increasingly unforgiving as your family's resource needs exceed your combined ability to provide. Your first offspring finally accepts the reality that your territory cannot support its continued presence and begins making serious attempts to establish independent hunting grounds. The process is painful to watch as the young adult struggles with techniques that seem natural when demonstrated but prove difficult to master when attempted alone. You want to help, but your own family's survival depends on focusing your limited energy on more immediate threats. Your second offspring's territorial ambitions create new complications as it begins marking trees and challenging the boundaries established by neighboring Tarsiers. These actions threaten to draw your family into conflicts you cannot afford to fight, but suppressing your offspring's natural development could doom its chances of ever achieving independence. The balance between family harmony and individual survival becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. Your third offspring's development continues to lag behind normal expectations as malnutrition and stress take their toll on its growth. The young Tarsier's coordination is poor, its reflexes are slow, and its hunting attempts are so unsuccessful that it remains completely dependent on family resources at an age when it should be contributing to the collective effort. You begin to wonder whether it will ever achieve the independence necessary for long-term survival. Your hunting schedule becomes increasingly desperate as you attempt to compensate for your family's collective shortfalls. You're now active during hours when most Tarsiers rest, pushing your body beyond its natural limits in a futile attempt to gather enough resources to keep everyone alive. Your success rate drops as fatigue affects your judgment and coordination, but stopping isn't an option when failure means watching your family starve. Your territorial defense becomes purely reactive as you lack the energy to maintain proactive patrols or aggressive boundary marking. You respond to incursions after they occur rather than preventing them, and each successful challenge by neighboring Tarsiers emboldens others to test your resolve. Your territory shrinks incrementally but steadily as you're forced to abandon areas you can no longer defend effectively. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers shifts from competitive to predatory, as some begin viewing your family as a source of resources rather than competition. They monitor your hunting patterns, looking for opportunities to steal catches or claim hunting grounds the moment you're too weak to defend them. The social dynamics of your forest community are changing, and your family's vulnerability makes you a target. Your mate's hunting becomes so inefficient that she often returns from expeditions having consumed more energy than the insects she caught provide. You're forced to make difficult decisions about whether her continued hunting efforts are worth the territorial exposure they create, or whether she should remain in your core shelter while you handle all resource gathering yourself. Your energy reserves reach critically low levels as the demands of supporting an oversized family on inadequate resources push your body beyond its sustainable limits. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably gather through normal foraging. Your physical condition deteriorates noticeably each week. Your family's social structure continues fragmenting as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Your offspring begin hoarding catches rather than sharing them, and conflicts over food become frequent and sometimes violent. You realize that the cooperative behaviors that once characterized your family unit are being replaced by desperate individual survival strategies. Your hunting grounds face additional pressure as seasonal changes affect insect populations in your area. The reliable patterns you've depended on for years become unpredictable, and the techniques you've perfected for specific prey species prove inadequate when those species become scarce or alter their behaviors in response to environmental stress. Your first offspring's departure from your territory happens gradually as it establishes temporary shelters in neutral areas between established territories. The young adult's hunting skills remain marginal, but its presence in your territory has become an unsustainable drain on resources that your remaining family members desperately need. Your second offspring begins showing signs of sexual maturity, which adds new complications to your family's resource management as its dietary needs increase and its behavior becomes more independent. The young Tarsier's territorial instincts are developing, but its hunting skills lag behind, creating a dangerous combination of ambition and incompetence. Your third offspring's survival prospects continue to deteriorate as developmental delays compound the challenges of life in a resource-scarce environment. The young Tarsier's growth is stunted, its coordination is poor, and its hunting attempts are so unsuccessful that it remains completely dependent on family resources at an age when independence should be emerging. Your territorial boundaries continue eroding as neighbors sense your weakness and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds through aggressive scent marking and direct confrontation. You lack the physical capability to defend your earlier territorial extent and are forced to retreat into an increasingly small core area that provides marginal resources. Your hunting efficiency drops to levels that barely sustain your own survival, let alone support your family's needs. You're forced to spend more time hunting to achieve the same caloric intake that previously required much less effort, and the energy cost of these extended hunting sessions begins exceeding the nutritional value of your catches. Your mate's condition shows signs of permanent decline as the stress of repeated pregnancies and constant resource scarcity creates health problems that won't resolve with rest or improved nutrition. Her reflexes are slower, her strength is reduced, and her recovery time from minor injuries is longer than it once was. Your family's resource situation reaches a crisis point where mathematical reality forces difficult decisions about survival priorities. You cannot support 4 Tarsiers on territory that barely sustains 2, and continuing to try will likely result in the death of all family members rather than the survival of some. Your relationship with your mate becomes strained as survival pressures create conflicts over resource allocation and territorial strategy. You find yourselves disagreeing about fundamental decisions that would have been cooperative during your earlier partnership as individual survival instincts begin overriding family loyalty. Your second offspring's territorial ambitions create additional complications as it begins challenging your authority and competing directly with its siblings for limited resources. You recognize this behavior as natural development, but it also signals that your family structure is fragmenting under pressure that cannot be relieved through normal means. Your hunting grounds become increasingly marginal as you're pushed into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. The energy cost of hunting in these dangerous areas often exceeds the caloric value of your catches, creating a resource deficit that compounds your family's survival crisis. Your age becomes a critical factor in your declining ability to compete for resources. As your physical capabilities deteriorate and your recovery time from injuries increases, younger Tarsiers become increasingly bold in their challenges to your territorial claims, sensing that your ability to defend your holdings is compromised. Your third offspring's development continues to be severely compromised by inadequate nutrition and the stress of life in a contested territory. The young Tarsier's physical capabilities lag behind what would be expected for its age group, and its hunting skills show little improvement despite your attempts at instruction. Your territorial defense becomes increasingly selective as you're forced to prioritize the most critical areas while abandoning marginal territories that are too expensive to maintain. This strategic retreat is necessary for survival, but it also reduces your family's resource base at a time when their needs are greatest. Your energy expenditure for family support and territorial defense exceeds your ability to gather resources through hunting, creating an unsustainable situation where your physical condition deteriorates despite successful foraging efforts. You're caught in a downward spiral that threatens your family's survival. Your mate's hunting efficiency drops to levels where her efforts barely cover her own nutritional needs and contribute virtually nothing to family resources. You're essentially supporting your entire family on your own hunting efforts while also maintaining whatever territorial defense you can manage. Your family's social dynamics become increasingly dysfunctional as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Conflicts over food become frequent and violent, and the cooperative behaviors that once characterized your family unit are replaced by desperate individual survival strategies. Your first offspring's continued presence in neutral territory creates ongoing security concerns, as its failed attempts at independence attract attention from established territorial holders who view any new Tarsier in their area as a potential threat. The young adult's vulnerability could draw conflicts that affect your family's safety. Your second offspring begins making exploratory trips beyond your territorial boundaries as its territorial instincts develop, but its hunting skills remain inadequate for independent survival. These expeditions create diplomatic risks with neighboring Tarsiers while providing little practical benefit to your family's resource situation. Your hunting technique shows clear signs of age-related decline as your reflexes slow and your physical coordination deteriorates. You miss strikes that would have been automatic just months ago and find yourself unable to pursue prey through the complex movements that once came naturally. Your territorial holdings shrink to a core area that barely provides adequate resources for your family's survival. Your scent markers are increasingly ignored by neighbors who sense your weakness, and your ability to defend even these reduced boundaries becomes questionable. Your mate's reproductive career appears to be ending as her physical condition deteriorates beyond the point where another pregnancy would be viable. This realization forces you to confront the fact that your family's growth phase is over, and that survival now depends on successfully raising your existing offspring to independence. Your third offspring's survival prospects appear increasingly doubtful as the combination of malnutrition, developmental delays, and territorial instability creates challenges that may be impossible to overcome. You realize that your reproductive success is declining with each generation, and that your genetic legacy faces an uncertain future. Your hunting grounds face additional environmental pressure as drought conditions affect insect populations throughout your area. The reliable water sources that once supported diverse prey species begin drying up, forcing insects to concentrate in fewer locations that are heavily contested by multiple Tarsier families. Your family's resource crisis forces you to make increasingly desperate decisions about survival priorities, including choices between supporting struggling offspring and maintaining adequate nutrition for family members with better long-term survival prospects. The mathematics of survival leave no room for sentiment or wishful thinking. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes increasingly hostile as competition for limited resources intensifies. Territories that once had clear boundaries become contested zones where conflicts occur regularly, and your success rate in these confrontations continues declining as your physical condition deteriorates. Your mate's condition stabilizes at a level that's concerning but manageable. She can still contribute to family hunting efforts, but her efficiency is so low that her presence often costs more energy than her catches provide. You find yourself covering her shortfalls while managing your own declining capabilities. Your second offspring's territorial instincts create new complications as it begins challenging the boundaries established by neighboring Tarsiers. These actions threaten to draw your family into conflicts you cannot afford to fight, but suppressing your offspring's natural development could doom its chances of ever achieving independence. Your hunting schedule becomes increasingly desperate as you attempt to compensate for your family's collective shortfalls. You're now active during hours when most Tarsiers rest, pushing your body beyond its natural limits in a futile attempt to gather enough resources to keep everyone alive. Your territorial defense becomes purely reactive as you lack the energy to maintain proactive patrols or aggressive boundary marking. You respond to incursions after they occur rather than preventing them, and each successful challenge by neighboring Tarsiers emboldens others to test your resolve. Your energy reserves reach critically low levels as the demands of supporting an oversized family on inadequate resources push your body beyond its sustainable limits. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably gather. Your third offspring's development continues to lag behind normal expectations as malnutrition and stress take their toll on its growth. The young Tarsier's coordination is poor, its reflexes are slow, and its hunting attempts are so unsuccessful that it remains completely dependent on family resources. Your family's social structure continues fragmenting as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Your offspring begin hoarding catches rather than sharing them, and conflicts over food become frequent and sometimes violent as survival instincts override family bonds. Your hunting grounds become increasingly inadequate as you're forced into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. The energy cost of hunting in these marginal areas often exceeds the caloric value of your catches, creating a resource deficit that compounds your family's survival crisis. Your age becomes a significant factor in your declining ability to compete for resources. As your physical capabilities deteriorate and your recovery time from injuries increases, younger Tarsiers become increasingly bold in their challenges to your territorial claims, sensing that your defensive capabilities are compromised. Your mate's hunting becomes so inefficient that she often returns from expeditions having consumed more energy than the insects she caught provide. You're forced to make difficult decisions about whether her continued hunting efforts are worth the territorial exposure they create. Your first offspring's departure from your territory happens gradually as it establishes temporary shelters in neutral areas between established territories. The young adult's hunting skills remain marginal, but its presence in your territory has become an unsustainable drain on resources. Your second offspring begins showing signs of sexual maturity, which adds new complications to your family's resource management. As its dietary needs increase and its behavior becomes more independent, the young Tarsier's territorial instincts are developing, but its hunting skills lag behind. Your territorial boundaries continue eroding as neighbors sense your weakness and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds through aggressive scent marking and direct confrontation. You lack the physical capability to defend your earlier territorial extent and are forced to retreat. Your hunting efficiency drops to levels that barely sustain your own survival, let alone support your family's needs. You're forced to spend more time hunting to achieve the same caloric intake that previously required much less effort. Your family's resource situation reaches a crisis point where mathematical reality forces difficult decisions about survival priorities. You cannot support 4 Tarsiers on territory that barely sustains 2, and continuing to try will likely result in the death of all family members. Your relationship with your mate becomes strained as survival pressures create conflicts over resource allocation and territorial strategy. You find yourselves disagreeing about fundamental decisions that would have been cooperative during your earlier partnership. Your third offspring's survival prospects continue to deteriorate as developmental delays compound the challenges of life in a resource-scarce environment. The young Tarsier's growth is stunted, its coordination is poor, and its hunting attempts remain completely unsuccessful. Your territorial defense becomes increasingly selective as you're forced to prioritize the most critical areas while abandoning marginal territories that are too expensive to maintain. This strategic retreat reduces your family's resource base when their needs are greatest. Your energy expenditure for family support and territorial defense exceeds your ability to gather resources through hunting, creating an unsustainable situation where your physical condition deteriorates despite successful foraging efforts. Your mate's condition shows signs of permanent decline as the stress of repeated pregnancies and constant resource scarcity creates health problems that won't resolve with rest or improved nutrition. Her physical capabilities continue deteriorating. Your family's social dynamics become increasingly dysfunctional as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Conflicts over food become frequent and violent as the cooperative behaviors that once characterized your family unit disappear. Your hunting grounds face additional pressure as environmental changes affect insect populations in your area. The reliable patterns you've depended on for years become unpredictable, and the techniques you've perfected prove inadequate when prey species become scarce. Your second offspring's territorial ambitions create additional complications as it begins challenging your authority and competing directly with its siblings for limited resources. You recognize this behavior as natural development, but it signals that your family structure is fragmenting. Your age becomes a critical factor in your declining ability to compete for resources as your physical capabilities deteriorate and your recovery time from injuries increases. Younger Tarsiers become increasingly bold in their challenges to your territorial claims. Your third offspring's development continues to be severely compromised by inadequate nutrition and the stress of life in a contested territory. The young Tarsier's physical capabilities lag behind what would be expected for its age group. Your territorial holdings shrink to a core area that barely provides adequate resources for your family's survival. Your scent markers are increasingly ignored by neighbors who sense your weakness, and your ability to defend even these reduced boundaries becomes questionable. Your hunting technique shows clear signs of age-related decline. As your reflexes slow and your physical coordination deteriorates, you miss strikes that would have been automatic just months ago, and find yourself unable to pursue prey through complex movements. Your mate's hunting efficiency drops to levels where her efforts barely cover her own nutritional needs and contribute virtually nothing to family resources. You're essentially supporting your entire family on your own hunting efforts while maintaining whatever territorial defense you can manage. Your family's resource crisis forces you to make increasingly desperate decisions about survival priorities, including choices between supporting struggling offspring and maintaining adequate nutrition for family members with better long-term survival prospects. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers becomes increasingly hostile as competition for limited resources intensifies. Territories that once had clear boundaries become contested zones where conflicts occur regularly, and your success rate in these confrontations continues declining. Your first offspring's continued presence in neutral territory creates ongoing security concerns, as its failed attempts at independence attract attention from established territorial holders who view any new Tarsier in their area as a potential threat. Your second offspring begins making exploratory trips beyond your territorial boundaries as its territorial instincts develop, but its hunting skills remain inadequate for independent survival. These expeditions create diplomatic risks with neighboring Tarsiers. Your mate's reproductive career appears to be ending as her physical condition deteriorates beyond the point where another pregnancy would be viable. This realization forces you to confront the fact that your family's growth phase is over. Your third offspring's survival prospects appear increasingly doubtful as the combination of malnutrition, developmental delays, and territorial instability creates challenges that may be impossible to overcome. You realize that your reproductive success is declining with each generation. Your hunting grounds face additional environmental pressure as drought conditions affect insect populations throughout your area. The reliable water sources that once supported diverse prey species begin drying up, forcing insects to concentrate in fewer, heavily contested locations. Your energy reserves are constantly depleted by the impossible demands of supporting an oversized family on inadequate territorial resources. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably sustain. Your territorial defense becomes purely reactive as you lack the energy to maintain proactive patrols or aggressive boundary marking. You respond to incursions after they occur rather than preventing them, and each successful challenge emboldens others. Your family's social structure continues fragmenting as resource scarcity creates competition between members who previously cooperated. Your offspring begin hoarding catches rather than sharing them, and conflicts over food become frequent and violent. Your hunting schedule becomes increasingly desperate as you attempt to compensate for your family's collective shortfalls. You're now active during hours when most Tarsiers rest, pushing your body beyond its natural limits in a futile attempt to gather enough resources. Your mate's condition stabilizes at a level that's concerning but manageable. She can still contribute to family hunting efforts, but her efficiency is so low that her presence often costs more energy than her catches provide. Your second offspring's territorial instincts create new complications as it begins challenging the boundaries established by neighboring Tarsiers. These actions threaten to draw your family into conflicts you cannot afford to fight. Your third offspring's development continues to lag behind normal expectations as malnutrition and stress take their toll on its growth. The young Tarsier's coordination is poor, its reflexes are slow, and its hunting attempts remain unsuccessful. Your hunting grounds become increasingly inadequate as you're forced into areas with lower insect density and higher predator activity. The energy cost of hunting in these marginal areas often exceeds the caloric value of your catches. Your age becomes a significant factor in your declining ability to compete for resources. As your physical capabilities deteriorate and your recovery time from injuries increases, younger Tarsiers become increasingly bold in their challenges. Your territorial boundaries continue eroding as neighbors sense your weakness and begin claiming portions of your hunting grounds through aggressive scent marking and direct confrontation. You lack the physical capability to defend your earlier territorial extent. Your hunting efficiency drops to levels that barely sustain your own survival, let alone support your family's needs. You're forced to spend more time hunting to achieve the same caloric intake that previously required much less effort. Your family's resource situation reaches a crisis point where mathematical reality forces difficult decisions about survival priorities. You cannot support 4 Tarsiers on territory that barely sustains 2, and continuing to try will likely result in total family mortality. Your relationship with your mate reaches a breaking point as the mathematics of survival force impossible choices between individual and family needs. She begins spending more time away from your core territory, ostensibly hunting, but often returning with catches so small they barely justify the energy expenditure. You suspect she's eating her catches immediately rather than bringing them back to share, but confronting her about this would only accelerate the family's dissolution. Your first offspring makes a final attempt at establishing independence by claiming a small territory in the borderlands between established holdings. The area is marginal, with poor hunting and high predator activity, but it's undefended and therefore available. The young adult's chances of long-term survival are minimal, but staying in your territory guarantees death from resource competition. Your second offspring's territorial marking becomes increasingly aggressive as it challenges boundaries established by neighboring Tarsiers. These actions threaten to draw your family into conflicts you cannot afford, but suppressing this natural development could doom its chances of ever achieving independence. You're caught between protecting your family's immediate safety and ensuring your offspring's future survival. Your third offspring's condition deteriorates noticeably as malnutrition compounds the effects of developmental delays. The young Tarsier's hunting attempts are so unsuccessful that it remains completely dependent on family resources at an age when it should be contributing to the collective effort. Its survival prospects appear increasingly doubtful. Your hunting grounds face new pressure as a severe drought affects insect populations throughout your region. The water sources that once supported diverse prey species dry up completely, forcing the remaining insects to concentrate in a few heavily contested locations that are dominated by stronger, more established Tarsiers. Your energy reserves drop to critically low levels as the demands of supporting an oversized family on inadequate resources push your body beyond its sustainable limits. You find yourself losing weight despite successful hunting because the caloric costs of your lifestyle exceed what you can reasonably gather through normal foraging. Your territorial defense becomes purely reactive as you lack the energy to maintain proactive patrols or aggressive boundary marking. You respond to incursions after they occur rather than preventing them, and each successful challenge by neighboring Tarsiers emboldens others to test your resolve. Your mate's hunting efficiency drops to levels where her efforts barely cover her own nutritional needs. She often returns from expeditions having consumed more energy than the insects she caught provide, creating a net drain on family resources that you're forced to compensate for through your own increasingly desperate efforts. Your family's social structure collapses completely as resource scarcity creates violent competition between members who previously cooperated. Your offspring begin attacking each other over food, and the cooperative behaviors that once characterized your family unit are replaced by desperate individual survival strategies. Your second offspring's departure happens suddenly after a violent confrontation with its younger sibling over a particularly large cricket. The fight escalates beyond normal sibling competition, and you're forced to intervene before serious injury occurs. The second offspring leaves that night, and you don't see it again. Your third offspring's development reaches a crisis point as its physical condition deteriorates beyond the point where recovery seems possible. The young Tarsier's coordination is so poor that it can barely maintain its grip on branches, and its hunting attempts have become dangerous to both itself and potential prey. Your hunting schedule becomes completely unsustainable as you attempt to support your remaining family members on territory that can barely sustain one Tarsier. You're active during all hours now, including dangerous daylight periods when predator activity is highest, but your success rate continues declining as exhaustion affects your judgment. Your mate's behavior becomes increasingly erratic as malnutrition and stress take their toll on her mental state. She sometimes disappears for days at a time, returning with no explanation and no food. Her contribution to family resources becomes negative as her presence creates more problems than her hunting solves. Your territorial boundaries shrink to a core area that provides only the most basic resources. Your scent markers are completely ignored by neighbors who sense your weakness, and your ability to defend even these reduced holdings becomes questionable as your physical condition deteriorates. Your relationship with neighboring Tarsiers shifts from competitive to predatory, as some begin viewing your family as a source of resources rather than competition. They monitor your hunting patterns, looking for opportunities to steal catches or claim hunting grounds the moment you're too weak to defend them. Your first offspring's attempt at independence fails catastrophically when it tries to establish territory in an area already claimed by an established male. The confrontation is brief and violent, leaving your offspring severely injured and forced to retreat to neutral ground where its survival prospects are minimal. Your hunting technique shows severe signs of age and stress-related decline. You miss strikes that would have been automatic just weeks ago and find yourself unable to pursue prey through the complex aerial maneuvers that once came naturally. Your energy expenditure for each successful catch increases dramatically, while your success rate plummets. Your third offspring's survival becomes your primary focus as its condition deteriorates beyond the point where independence seems possible. The young Tarsier requires constant care and protection while contributing nothing to family resources, creating an impossible drain on your already inadequate energy reserves. Your mate's mental state continues deteriorating as the stress of family survival creates behavioral changes that make her increasingly dangerous to herself and others. Her hunting expeditions become longer and more erratic, and she sometimes returns with injuries that suggest encounters with predators or other Tarsiers. Your energy expenditure for family support exceeds your ability to gather resources through hunting by a margin that makes continued survival mathematically impossible. You're caught in a downward spiral where each day's efforts leave you weaker and less capable of meeting the next day's challenges. Your territorial holdings become so reduced that they no longer provide adequate resources for even minimal survival. Your core area consists of 3 trees with marginal hunting potential and no reliable water source. The insects that remain are mostly species you've never successfully caught. Your family's resource crisis forces a final decision about survival priorities. You cannot support 2 tarsiers on territory that barely sustains one, and continuing to try will likely result in the death of both remaining family members rather than the survival of either. Your third offspring's condition reaches a point where its death becomes inevitable. Malnutrition and developmental delays have created a cascade of health problems that cannot be reversed through improved nutrition or care. The young tarsier's suffering becomes more important than its survival. Your mate's final departure happens without warning or explanation. She simply disappears one night and doesn't return. You wait for several days before accepting that she's either dead or has abandoned the family entirely, leaving you alone with your dying offspring and no realistic prospect of recovery. Your hunting efforts become increasingly desperate as you attempt to support your remaining offspring while maintaining your own survival on territory that provides inadequate resources for either goal. Your success rate drops to levels that barely sustain basic metabolism, while your energy expenditure increases dramatically. Your third offspring's death occurs quietly during what would have been a normal rest period. The young tarsier simply stops breathing without struggle or apparent pain. Its body is so depleted that death comes as a relief from suffering that had become unbearable. Your isolation becomes complete as neighboring tarsiers begin treating your territory as abandoned land. They ignore your scent markers and hunt freely in areas you once defended successfully. Your presence is tolerated only because you no longer pose a threat to their resource-gathering efforts. Your physical condition deteriorates rapidly once you're no longer supporting family members. The stress of constant resource gathering without adequate nutrition has damaged your body beyond its ability to recover. Your reflexes are slow, your strength is minimal, and your coordination is severely impaired. Your hunting becomes increasingly ineffective as age and malnutrition compound the effects of territorial pressure. You miss strikes that would have been automatic during your prime and find yourself unable to pursue prey through movements that once came naturally. Your energy expenditure often exceeds the caloric value of your catches. Your territorial defense becomes impossible as you lack the energy to respond to incursions by neighboring tarsiers who sense your weakness. Your boundaries shrink daily as others claim portions of your hunting grounds through aggressive scent marking and direct appropriation. Your final hunting expedition takes you into areas where predator activity is dangerously high, but insect density offers the only realistic chance of finding adequate nutrition. Your reflexes are too slow to detect the approach of threats that would have been obvious dangers during your prime. Your death comes suddenly when a large owl attacks during what should have been a routine hunting session. Your weakened condition makes escape impossible, and your final moments are brief, as powerful talons end your struggle for survival in a forest that no longer has room for aged or weakened competitors. Your body disappears quickly into the forest ecosystem, providing nutrition for scavengers and decomposers, while your territory is claimed by younger tarsiers who will face the same challenges that ultimately consumed your family. The cycle continues with new players, but the same mathematical realities that make long-term survival impossible for most individuals. Your genetic legacy survives only in your first offspring, who manage to establish marginal territory in the borderlands where survival is possible but difficult. The young adult's reproductive prospects are uncertain, but its existence represents the only continuation of your bloodline in a forest where most family lines end in failure. Your story becomes part of the forest's larger narrative of competition, survival, and death, where individual success is temporary and family lines rise and fall based on their ability to adapt to changing conditions and compete for limited resources in an ecosystem that favors the young, the strong, and the ruthless. Your legacy in this forest is measured not in years, but in the brief moments when your offspring successfully caught their first insects, when they learned to navigate the canopy without falling, when they marked their first territorial boundaries with scent that announced their presence to a world that didn't care whether they lived or died. Your territory reverts to neutral ground within days of your death, as neighboring Tarsiers quickly claim the hunting spots you once defended with your life. The trees you marked with your scent for years now carry the signatures of strangers who never knew you existed and never will. Your mate's fate remains unknown. She disappeared into the vast forest and could be anywhere, thriving in some distant territory or dead in a hollow tree that no one will ever find. The forest keeps its secrets and offers no closure to stories that end without witnesses. Your first offspring's survival depends on skills you taught during those brief months when your family was intact. The young adult's hunting technique shows traces of your instruction, and its territorial marking patterns echo the lessons you demonstrated before resource scarcity tore your family apart. Your second offspring's territorial ambitions may have been premature, but they reflected the proper instincts for survival in a competitive environment. Whether those instincts will translate into long-term success depends on factors beyond your influence or control. Your third offspring's brief life serves as a reminder that not every individual can survive the harsh mathematics of forest existence. Some are born into circumstances that make success impossible, regardless of parental effort or genetic potential. Your hunting grounds become part of the larger ecosystem, where other Tarsiers will repeat the same cycles of territorial establishment, family formation, resource competition, and eventual decline that characterized your own existence. Your story illustrates the fundamental reality that individual Tarsiers face in a world where survival depends on constant vigilance, perfect timing, and the ability to adapt to changing conditions that can shift from favorable to fatal within a single season. Your genetic contribution to the forest's Tarsier population represents one thread in a complex web of heredity that stretches back millions of years and will continue long after your bloodline either thrives or disappears entirely. Your experience reflects the broader patterns of life in tropical forests, where biodiversity depends on the continuous turnover of individuals who compete for resources that can support only a fraction of those who need them. Your territorial holdings become part of the forest's ever-changing map of claimed and unclaimed areas, where boundaries shift constantly based on the strength and determination of individuals who must fight for every tree, every hunting spot, every safe sleeping place. Your hunting techniques join the accumulated knowledge that passes from generation to generation through observation and imitation, ensuring that successful strategies survive even when the individuals who developed them do not. Your family's rise and fall demonstrates the cyclical nature of success in environments where resources are limited and competition is constant, where every generation must prove itself capable of surviving challenges that defeated their predecessors. Your death marks the end of one story, but the beginning of countless others, As the forest continues its endless cycle of birth, growth, competition, and death with new players who will face the same challenges that shaped your existence. Your memory survives only in the behaviors and instincts of your offspring, who carry forward the lessons you taught them about survival in a world that offers no guarantees and no second chances to those who fail to adapt. Your contribution to the forest ecosystem extends beyond your genetic legacy to include the insects you caught, the territories you defended, the conflicts you resolved, and the space you occupied in the complex web of relationships that defines life in the canopy. Your story becomes part of the larger narrative of evolution, where individual success and failure contribute to the long-term survival of species that must constantly adapt to changing environmental conditions and competitive pressures. Your existence mattered not because you achieved immortality or permanent success, but because you participated in the ongoing process of life that depends on the efforts of countless individuals who struggle and die to ensure that their species continues. Your final contribution to the forest comes through your death, as your body provides nutrition for decomposers and scavengers who will use that energy to support their own survival efforts in the endless cycle of consumption and renewal. Your place in the forest's history is secure not because you were exceptional, but because you were typical of the millions of Tarsiers who have lived and died in these trees, each contributing their small part to the larger story of survival and adaptation. Your legacy lives on in the forest itself, which continues to support new generations of Tarsiers who will face the same challenges and opportunities that defined your existence, each carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of their ancestors. Your story ends, but the forest's story continues with new characters who will repeat the same patterns of territorial establishment, family formation, resource competition, and eventual replacement by younger, stronger individuals who carry the cycle forward. Life as a Tarsier might seem brief and brutal, but there's something profound in the struggle itself. Every leap through the darkness, every successful hunt, every moment of family connection represents a small victory against impossible odds. Your story wasn't about achieving immortality or permanent success. It was about participating in something much larger than yourself, contributing your genetic legacy and learned behaviors to a process that has continued for millions of years. The forest that claimed your life will nurture countless other Tarsiers who will face the same mathematical realities you faced. They'll establish territories, raise families, and eventually succumb to the same pressures that overwhelmed you. But each generation builds on the accumulated wisdom of those who came before, refining techniques, adapting strategies, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in a world that offers no guarantees. Your offspring carry forward the lessons you taught them about reading the forest's subtle signs, about timing their strikes with deadly precision, about the delicate balance between aggression and caution that means the difference between life and death. These skills will spread through the population, your contribution to the endless process of adaptation that keeps your species alive. The territory you defended with your life has already been claimed by others, but the hunting techniques you perfected, the territorial strategies you developed, and the survival instincts you demonstrated will influence Tarsier behavior long after your scent has faded from those trees. Evolution doesn't remember individuals, but it preserves the innovations that work. In the end, your story illustrates a fundamental truth about life in the wild. Success isn't measured in years survived or territories held, but in the genetic and behavioral legacy you leave behind. Every Tarsio that learns to hunt more efficiently Every family that survives one more generation, every adaptation that improves survival odds carries forward the accumulated wisdom of millions of ancestors who faced the same challenges you faced. The forest continues its endless cycle of birth, growth, competition, and death, but each cycle builds on the last. Your brief existence added one more thread to the complex tapestry of survival strategies that will help your species navigate whatever challenges the future holds. That's not just survival, that's immortality of a different kind. I hope you liked the video. Leave a subscription. Until then, see you soon.